responding to humanitarian affairs, you can hardly do this on your own. So what's the level of your collaboration then?
Well, we take that very seriously, collaboration and partnership. One of our key priority areas is on strategic partnerships, and we've been trying to build on those partnerships that are in existence and then to reach out to more. The UN body, for instance, they are our partners. Almost all the UN agencies, we are working with them under the umbrella of the United Nations Resident Humanitarian Coordinator in the country. We work with other development partners. Within the country, we have MDAs that we are working with. We must work with. We're working with Ministry of Interior, especially on issues of refugees, stateless persons, trafficked persons, because they are in charge of exit and entry. We also work with Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Ministry of Youth Development, Ministry of Women Affairs, Ministry of Education, because as it is now, we are partnering with Ministry of Education on the alternate school program, right, where we want to incorporate this almajiris into the formal, so to speak, sector of education by way of, supporting the malams through our various interventions, and then so that the children will be off the street, right, and we support them to come. So it's one of those collaborations we're having with me. So you cannot do it alone. There must be partnership, there must be collaboration, and we're doing that. It's one of our key priority, area.
Now, some look at the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and say that there are so many key agencies which you supervise. And that's a daunting task, because people are wondering that one ministry has suddenly become a super ministry, and quite a number of agencies that you supervise. How is that task of supervision carried out?
Well, Cyril, let me first of all mention the number of agencies that we have in this ministry. We have 4 agencies and 2 programs. We have the National Emergency Management Agency. We have the National Commission for Refugees, Migrants and IDPs. We have the Northeast Development Commission. We have the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP. Then we have the SDGs, and then the National Social Investment Programs. So there are 6.
And these are huge.
We have ministries, Cyril, that have 40-something agencies, 30-something, 20-something. But the most important thing that we should look at in this particular matter is the issue of the interconnectivity of these agencies with the ministry. There are agencies that deal with humanitarian issues. They cannot be better in any other place than this Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. And that is what the government saw and felt, that all these humanitarian agencies and social development programs should be under one umbrella for effective coordination and supervision. That is the essence. They didn't bring any agency under the Ministry of Petroleum or Ministry of Works or Transport under this ministry. All these agencies are agencies that deal with humanitarian issues. They are interconnected. They have similar roles to play. So it will be in the best interest of government that these agencies are under a ministry that will supervise them, coordinate them, so that there will be synergy, there will be complementarity in their, responsibilities rather than, fighting each other.
Okay.
All this interagency rivalry. Now, when we have an issue that has to do with trafficking in persons, and we're supposed to evacuate people, I would just, we'll talk, NAPTIP is on top of it.
Welcome to Abuja, the place that unites Nigeria.
Minister, just before we round off, there's just this small matter which we would like you to clarify. In our discussion so far, you've mentioned it, that it's not possible for the government to dish out these palliatives to every single citizen. Certainly not every single Nigerian citizen, and not even every vulnerable group. But then quite recently, there were stories, particularly in the social media, that you said every family in this country had received palliatives. We'd like you to clarify if you actually said anything like that.
Cyril, I didn't. It is a very impossible ambition for anybody to say or to even think that he can give palliatives to every Nigerian. What I said at that briefing, it was during the PTF briefing, and I have my briefing notes, was that I have delivered palliatives to every state of this country for onward distribution to the poor and the vulnerable. To every state, I have taken palliatives, except one state till today, if they want, their palliative is there. So for every state, as far as I'm concerned, we have taken palliatives for onward distribution to the poor and the vulnerable. This was what I said, but I was misquoted, and I came back to clarify on the same platform that it's just humanly impossible for Nigeria to say that it can feed every Nigerian, it can give every Nigerian palliative. I don't think even our budget can accommodate that. So,
Sadia Umar Farouk, Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development. It's been interesting talking to you. We're glad that you've come again to talk about these issues, and we thank you for coming on One-on-One.
Thank you so much, Cyril, for having me, and good to see you again.
And as we usually say these days, stay safe as you carry out your mandate.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And that's our program today. We thank you for being with us. Next week we'll be back with One-on-One. I am Cyril Stover. Stay safe.
Do you not know that our enemies have no face? They are indigents of no state. They come from no place. And if this boat capsizes, every one of us will go under. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do not say, I am the Iroko when the forest is burning. Do not say, I am the Obeche when the forest is burning. Our differences will not stop us from perishing together. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer.
Imagine a station where you access information. Think of a station that creates awareness for national development. Imagine a station that prepares you for a bright and greater future. A station for all ages. Documentaries, classroom and television, events coverage, children's programs and variety shows. Always stay tuned to NTA Knowledge on the Star Times platform, channel 359. For partnership, sponsorship and advert placements, contact us on NTA Knowledge. NTA Knowledge, learning to broaden horizon.
This is NTA International. The Malian crisis has taken several dimensions, just as the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, has taken steps towards resolving the crisis. The very recent is the extraordinary summit of heads of states and government of ECOWAS, where certain decisions were taken. So on the program, today we shall be taking a look at the Malian crisis, the connections and disconnections, whose interests and the way forward. My guest is a scholar, professional teacher, political scientist and former Vice Chancellor, University of Abuja, Professor Nuhu Yakub. The program continues shortly. Stay with us. Let's begin by taking a look at the entire scenario. As much as the analytics have been on the public domain, let me take your own side of it. What has been your own assessment of the entire scenario before we go into specifics?
Well, I think what has been happening in Mali is not exceptional. If you put it in the context of the African-wide intrastate conflicts, I discovered that the colonialists came to Africa, and arbitrarily drew up the international boundaries of these countries, and in the process, you have ethnic groups that have been distributed among different countries. And what has even made it more problematic is that in some cases you have one ethnic group divided between different colonial authorities. For instance, in the Nigerian case, you discover that you have the Yoruba speaking people in our neighboring country, Dahomey.
Okay.
Benin Republic.
Yeah.
Yes. And you also have, that country was colonized by the French. And you also have the Yoruba-speaking ethnic group in Nigeria, colonized by the English. If you go to the northern part of Nigeria, you have the Hausas, straddling the international boundaries of both Niger and Nigeria. So it is this kind of, one of the things that actually has created intrastate, conflicts. In fact, between 1960 and 2008, it was calculated that there were no less than 80 different intra-state conflicts in Africa.
Okay.
And that is, that is remarkable in the sense that, it shows, to the extent to which, colonial intervention in Africa, even though this is something that happened over 100 years ago, now, but the, effect of that process is still, festering. And you begin to wonder, when is this going to end? And it is not helped by the fact also that since independence, we have had different types of regimes. You have military, you even have civilian governments that are even more anti-democratic than the military. And then you also have the problem of poverty, which is very pervasive. There's poverty, there is a disease, there is exploitation of the resources of Africa, to the benefit of the, either the erstwhile colonial masters or, imperialist countries generally.
Okay.
So Africa is, in the, is in the conundrum. Yes, and this is why what actually should be. It should disturb leaders as well as followers in Africa.
Okay, let's try to look at the ECOWAS connection now.
Yeah.
As much as it has taken this long, ECOWAS has taken certain steps. First, let's take a look at the role played by former President Goodluck Jonathan. He was appointed by the ECOWAS as its envoy to mediate in the crisis, and he went.
Yeah.
And going to the country, a lot of comments were on the public domain asking, what can President Jonathan do? Others have been there. But he went, and shortly after, we had these decisions taken by ECOWAS.
Yeah.
So what do you make of his role so far?
Well, I think, again, let us try to put it in the context of even our internal politics in Nigeria. This was somebody who supervised an election that he lost. And, he had also made, what is now regarded as, historic statement. His election is not worth the blood of any, single Nigerian. So, in that context, I want to say that he had good credentials by being appointed by the collective wisdom of the West Africa, ECOWAS leadership. Okay, so, and he went with that good credentials, those good credentials, to go and mediate and make sure, and ensure that there is, peaceful resolution of the conflict. I think what role he played, and when he came back to Nigeria, he went straight to go and brief President Muhammad Buhari, and it also showed. I mean, it showed. In fact, I mean the report. I mean the interview he granted to the press when he left after conferring with the president, indicated that he was quite focused on his mission, and he went there, and to a very large extent also I would consider his initial trip, because he also went back with the president.
Absolutely.
Good. During the ECOWAS heads of state meeting, so he actually went there and was able to, kind of create, a conducive atmosphere for dialogue, among the contesting parties in the country.
Now, after he returned from Mali, there was an extraordinary session summit by ECOWAS heads of government and states on the matter, and they came up with major decisions. But one of it, which is very worrisome to the parties in Mali, is that ECOWAS is unnecessarily giving support to the embattled president. What do you make of this?
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter, again, let's put it in the context of, the governance system that we have witnessed in Africa since independence. As I said earlier, you have, those who claim to be, Democrats, or who came to office through, apparently democratic elections, and who went into office and became, dictators. So the same thing has happened in the case of Mali. Keita came to power, and, they started manipulating the constitutional court to the extent that, opponents of his own party were flushed out from the assembly. And this, exacerbated the problem. Apart from, the fact that there are other crises like the Tuaregs in the north, who also have been agitating for what they call their own homeland, Azawad, in the north, in the northern part of the country. Bad governance is actually a recipe for instability. Yes, in Africa, generally. And this is what also is specific about Mali.
Okay, so what do you make of the agitation that ECOWAS is using this instrument to back?
Well, the ECOWAS protocol on good governance is something that actually also should, drive any attempt at getting the crisis resolved. In other words, of course, everybody now agrees generally, globally, that military route to power is abhorrent. Democracy is what everybody is aspiring, to institute in their various countries.
Yeah.
Okay, so ECOWAS has a role to play, and it is part of it. Mali is a signatory to ECOWAS, treaty, and therefore, whatever ECOWAS is doing, should actually be accepted as legitimate.
Okay.
Anywhere, except, Mali or any other country that is a member of ECOWAS will want to, opt out. Mauritania opted out at a point. Yes. So if you are, but as long as you remain and you accede to, the ECOWAS treaty, then, you should accept, especially if, you also have internal crisis that has the potential of snowballing into neighboring, West African countries.
Okay. Most often, in looking at the governance challenged by big multinationals, like let's say big institutions, United Nations, AU, and now ECOWAS. The questions they ask is, these institutions are just there. They don't have the teeth to bite. They are just toothless bulldogs. Now, I say this because one of it is that it is claimed that the bloc, that is ECOWAS, maintained Mali's democratic constitution should be respected, and asked an ECOWAS commission to consider sanctions against all those who act contrary to the normalization process in the crisis. So what would ECOWAS do here? What laws would it use in case this happens?
Well, there is always this theoretical debate in international relations theory about, at the multilateral level, states are constrained because in the first instance, there is no global institution. There is no global, military institution. What you have is, agreement by various member countries of multilateral institutions to, contribute forces to maintain or to support peace activities in areas where there are conflicts. That is understood. And I think also it is now a convention. It is the norm in international relations. There is no state that could say, well, unilaterally. We have the big ones, like the USA, China, as well Soviet Union and the rest of them, that can easily mobilize. Drop this. Go to attack, sovereign states. Yeah. But they are constrained by even moral suasion. Institutions like the UN, AU, ECOWAS, the EU as well, can, actually invoke to say, oh, what we have done is actually wrong. We do not expect you to do this. We have that constraint, but all the same, if there is a convention or there is a treaty, you are a signatory to the treaty, you have to respect it. Okay. And therefore, what ECOWAS is doing, in my own view, is quite legitimate, because until Mali or any other country leaves ECOWAS, you have to actually abide by the treaty.
Okay. Now, how do you make of the 4-point plan, which included holding new elections for 31 parliamentary seats, which were contested,
yes,
sparking protest after the country's constitutional court ruled in favor of Keita's party?
Well, I think when we talk about democracy or democratic system of governance, you are actually talking in terms of inclusiveness. Okay? Everybody should be part of it. And there should also be no faint, not even faint, allusion to any, anti-democratic tendencies during elections. What has happened is that, the opponents of Keita, for instance, have actually, seen that, there was, miscarriage of justice. Our the declaration of electoral seats for 31 members of their party, and they will have to challenge. And I think the decision by ECOWAS, heads of state, on ensuring that the election, which has been the basis of the crisis, should actually be annulled, and a fresh one should be held. Or at least, or even if if that does not work, then there will be a fallback position, as far as I see it, by allowing, since it is it's already concluded that yes, there was a kind of hanky-panky in the way the election results were handled. Then the ECOWAS heads of state can also reconvene and give legitimacy to those who had already been elected, a priori.
Even after saying they should resign?
Well, the thing is that if the conflict continues, it doesn't see, there's no, light at the end of the tunnel. It is safer in terms of also saving lives. Okay. To reverse one's position. And I don't think this is too much for a multilateral organization like ECOWAS.
Okay. One of the positions of ECOWAS also the fact that as much as opposition in Mali say Keita should resign, ECOWAS said they don't support that position.
Yeah, because of the protocol of ECOWAS on governance, that there must be, as long as his own election is legitimate. Yeah, I also support ECOWAS that they should not, the opposition should not re-roll him into resigning.
What about forming a unity government?
Well, that's also an option. A unity
in the spirit of inclusiveness.
Yeah, in the spirit of inclusiveness, that is also an option which should be considered. I think when it comes to crisis, the human capability to actually size up issues, conflicts. The issues that are are dominant in any crisis situation, is such that we actually can, analyze and come to the realistic solution to problem. But when politics is involved, or specific interests are concerned, you tend to see that people want to sideline truth, principle for convenience.
Okay. Former President Goodluck Jonathan was appointed the envoy to mediate on this. He went to Mali, came back shortly after, accompanied President Buhari to Mali, came back, and we had this extraordinary summit by ECOWAS, and decisions were taken. And after these decisions were taken, a few things have happened back in Mali. Do you think it would be, in the wisdom of ECOWAS, it would be nice for its envoy, that is President Goodluck Jonathan, to return back to Mali to sustain the conversation?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, if you start a process that has not actually, achieved its ultimate objective, you don't have to, abandon it, because the cost of abandonment is even, higher than continuing. Yes, because if the opposition do not accept, it's a question of, we will, to your tent, all is ready, something of that nature.
Yes.
We'll go back to, the armed struggle, or, create, the conditions that will not make it possible for Keita. After all, he has stayed in office for more than 2 years without a cabinet. So I believe that there is no harm in actually reviewing a process that has not ultimately achieved its objective. There's no harm, and as I said, it is better to actually revisit a process that has not attained its objective, because already cost has been incurred. And if you abandon it, you want to start afresh, the dynamics of starting afresh could even create greater difficulties for the interests involved.
Okay, one want to say, well, it could have been anybody appointed.
Yeah.
But given the credentials of Goodluck Jonathan, he was appointed to mediate in the crisis. Are you looking at, besides ECOWAS, a Nigerian factor in this power play?
Well, I wouldn't say, what is the interest of Nigeria? The interest of Nigeria is to see how we can actually leverage on, one, our leadership role in Africa, the resources we have, and also the fact that, we also have internal, crisis, similar to what is happening in Mali. So if we are able to, mobilize our resources to take care of that, we may also learn a lesson that could be of help to us in resolving our internal crisis. So I support wholeheartedly that Nigeria should actually, get involved, not because it has any peculiar interest or selfish interest as such, but that in the overall interest of African solidarity, peace in Africa, and also leveraging on what lessons we can learn from our involvement in the crisis in our countries to solve our problem. Because, well, let's take note of this point. When Buhari went on the mission, there were people who are even who are criticizing him that he could not solve internal problems. He was getting involved. But that is the spirit of Africa, and that is what ECOWAS stands for: peace. ECOWAS, there's nowhere in the ECOWAS treaty where it is stated that there should a country should be encouraging crisis. What is rather, countries should be involved in ensuring that there's peaceful, coexistence in the region, as well as in Africa, and also, the peace that is obtained or generated is the one that can actually help to solve other problems. We have problems of poverty. We have problems of lack of industrial development. We can only achieve, solve such problems if there is peace in any particular country.
Okay, now let's see, when you take a comparison
Yeah.
at the regional blocks, ECOWAS seems to be doing a
Better.
lot.
Yeah.
Now, the parties are right there in Mali. And from your own position, what will you be telling the parties? Is it that ECOWAS is wasting resources for nothing?
Well, if the the forces, the internal forces, do not want to resolve the crisis, well, that's when probably one could come to the conclusion that ECOWAS has been involved in wasting limited resources. But I believe that if based on ECOWAS treaty, and also based on what I would call sense, logic, the forces that are involved in the crisis, in the political crisis in the country, should be able to accept mediation. Somebody who comes to your house to say, okay, I notice, or somebody who sees that your roof is leaking, but you probably do not, not know how that's the possibility of your roof leaking, comes to inform you, and the person is actually asking you to take good care of your property.
Yeah.
The state is theirs. Any other force or institution intervening from outside is actually helping to ensure that there is peace and amity within the country. That's the logic I see in it.
Yeah.
But and it doesn't also. We should not actually every time be looking at if you embark on peaceful resolution of conflict, we don't have to count the cost, because at the end of the day, what you realize if the conflict comes to an end is far better than what is the opportunity cost of not resolving the crisis. And I can, I want to link this with, the crisis, in Liberia that led to the setting up of ECOMOG. Let's assume, for the sake of this discussion, that conflict is still festering up to today. I was in Liberia between 2011, for a conference. Such a conference would not have held. I don't have had the opportunity of interacting with scholars from other parts of West Africa or Africa that attended the conference. So I believe that, any attempt at securing peace, in any crisis situation, should be welcome, and we shouldn't be counting the cost.
Okay, let's now look at Africa. If ECOWAS tries within the sub-region and is not heading anywhere, is there anything AU can do?
Yeah, AU can also, can come in. AU can come in, because after all, even before, AU transformed into AU, we've seen how, the organization, the continental organization, has been involved in resolving crisis. Take the crisis of the civil war in Nigeria in 1967 to 1970. There were mediation efforts by OAU then to see that the crisis was resolved amicably. Even though it didn't succeed. Eventually, it was actually a military defeat of the Biafrans, that brought the crisis to an end. But the mere fact that there was this spirit of embarking on peaceful resolution of the crisis, is something that should be celebrated, or something should be praised, or should be we should be happy about, and that is, and as I said also, the OAU stands or exists for peace, economic development, and cooperation. The whole idea of even asking each region to set up economic union like ECOWAS, what you have in East Africa, Southern Africa, and so on, the Maghreb region, is to see to what extent because AU also is constrained by its own resources. But if you have a smaller body like ECOWAS, ECOWAS will be able to address the issue much more steadfastly, than asking AU, because if it should the crisis becomes pervasive all over Africa, that is even going to be more difficult for AU on a standalone basis, to solve the problem. But with regional bodies, you now have forces